learned a great deal from the two previous speakers, and I think what they've said needs to be thought about and argued about within the labour movement. And if tomorrow we pass at the conference a resolution condemning the war in Libya, it will contribute towards the development of public opinion, which in the end could have a very big effect on government policy. When I saw the Queen in Ireland this week on television going and paying a tribute to those who died, these were people who died in order to get the British out of Ireland.
Yeah.
And there she was, sympathising with them, and it does remind you that many of the things that we did in the past, which we are told right, can now be seen to be wrong. And I think that needs to be brought into the picture when we talk about the Arab Revolution that is occurring, because the moves that occurred in Tunisia and Egypt and occurring now in Syria and so on are not just against the governments which are oppressive, but also against the policies those governments followed, which were to be simply agents of Western interests. And so when I look at the movements, the spirit behind the Arab revolt, that connects, in my mind, with the spirit of people in this country who also want to liberate themselves from what have been oppressive regimes in the past. And when you look at the Middle East, I mean, it's just astonishing how much of the Middle East has been controlled by Western governments. I mean, I was in Egypt in 1945, I was on leave at the end of the war, and I went to Palestine, and at that time, Britain occupied Egypt. It had been there since 1884, because the Egyptians failed to pay the duty they owed to, the interest they owed to us on loans that we had given to them to build the Suez Canal. And we stayed in Egypt from 1884 to 1955, then we got out, and a year later we had another war, this time with the Israelis, the Suez War, and that was part of an attempt to re-establish British control of Egypt. And then if you look at Morocco, that was run by Spain. If you look at Tunis and Algeria, they were run by the French. If you look at Syria, that was run by the French. And there was a pattern of control of the Arab world by Western imperial governments. And these policies are easy to understand, because if you own an empire, well, you get certain advantages. You get cheap raw materials, you get a market for your goods, you get military bases, and you control the policies of the countries you've occupied. And I think that a lot of Arabs now looking at Western policy see this as an attempt to re-establish Western control over the Arab world. And the Afghan war, the Iraq war, all of these were part of a pattern to reimpose Western power over the Arab world. And that is why it's not credible for us to be told that we are in Libya to support the revolt against Gaddafi. Because after all, we worked with Gaddafi, we armed Gaddafi, we supported Gaddafi, and now we're told that we are really natural allies of the Arab revolutionary movement, and it's simply not true. And of course the consequences of this war are going to be very easy to see. We were told originally we were going in to protect those who opposed Gaddafi from his attacks on their civil liberties, but now it's extended to bombing and the supply of equipment, and in no time at all we'll find we're absolutely up to our neck in a civil war in Libya, and that civil war will cost thousands of lives and will end up, if Western policy succeeds, with another puppet Libyan government run from London and Washington and Paris, and that will accentuate the Arab revolt to get rid of the system. So that's the historical context. And I think if you could pass a resolution tomorrow, and I've heard the speaker who's going to be presenting it, a very powerful case report, it's going to make a very important difference to the strength that we have in Britain to get the policy changed. I mean, if you look at the 2003, 2 million people out at the anti-war demonstration in London about the Iraq war, and in the end that war ended, and now Mr. Blair, who's responsible, is living with the decision he took to mislead Parliament. So never ever underestimate the impact that public opinion can have upon government policy. And I think that the PCS vote tomorrow, and then there were resolutions coming up at the TEC and Labour Body Conference, could build up a very, very powerful movement. Would have this advantage. It would then be seen by the Arab revolt as being natural allies, because the common policies would be there, instead of trying to jump on top of the Arab revolt in order to re-establish a colonial system. So all these movements are very, very important indeed. And I think to get such a good crowd tonight, and I know there are other fringe meetings, is an indication of commitment in the PCS, and I wish you all success when you discuss it tomorrow. I very much hope that your vote is in line with the very good speeches we've heard tonight. So thank you for coming, and if we keep together, we will succeed in winning.